The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, it is about noon, and it's the start of part of the Environmental Matters webinar series. Thank you for joining us. This topic is composting. We're going to do the basics of composting, and the title is also Making Gold, that it's almost like gardener's gold to have this great material that you can make. My name is Wendy Grethen, and I work here in the Environmental Services Division, a part of the Public Works of the City of Superior. Thanks for attending. And I hope everyone can hear me okay. So for looking ahead, what this webinar will include, I'll be talking about compost and its benefits and uses, as well as how to make it, both from food waste or yard waste. Some people do both, some do one or the other. And then what to and what not to do, a few tips, some issues that might come up and how to resolve them, and just some information about statistics and society relating to food waste, and some neat local efforts too that's going on. Composting is yet another great way of turning trash to treasure. We think of waste as kind of a dead end, but no, this really is a way of bringing it to life. It's a free process. Yes, you can buy bins and you can put some expense into it, but otherwise it's predominantly free process. And yes, it is recycling. You might see cars out there with bumper stickers. Compost happens. This is what nature does in any ways, and composting in your backyard in some of these setups are just ways to make it go a little faster and work for us to create this great soil to use in our gardens. Composting is a process. It will involve microbes that break down the materials and turn it back into really good soil filled with nutrients and basically is food for growth, and plants will really thrive in it. And it is biological. Again, the organisms are going to play a major role. For what the word compost means, it's actually Latin and it means to put together. It's a noun and a verb, so you can use it as I'm composting or the compost. I apply compost to my garden. And some words might not be so pleasant to say, of decay and rot, but those also are just involving change, changing the nature of something, the purpose of it. So what was waste becomes this vital food source. Benefits of compost: produce compost from waste. The compost material will contain these nutrients, both macro and micro, that often aren't present in synthetic fertilizers. Some people want to encourage growth in their garden and will put on fertilizers to make up for missing ingredients or to give an extra boost. Well, compost is that extra nutrients that the plants need. You create this robust organic matter that helps to retain water and releases nutrients slowly, not all at once. It helps buffer the soil. It can change the pH to an optimum range for nutrient availability to plants. It can actually change soil. We have a lot of sandy soil around here, and sandy soil we can add, when you add organic material to it, then you get better soil. And it also, with compost added, it loosens tightly bound materials in clay. So if you're in a more clay area and add compost, your roots will much more be able to spread, and water will be able to drain and air to penetrate. More benefits for composting: it helps clean up or remediate contaminated soil. It actually will absorb odors and treat some compounds. There will be some things you don't want to add to your pile. It helps eliminate some pesticides and wood preservatives. And there's really an economic benefit because it's reducing the need for water, because it helps retain water, reduces the need for applying any sort of pesticides and fertilizers, so you really can go organic. And it extends our landfill space. Cities and landfills that are out there definitely have deliveries every day of things that don't necessarily need to be put into a landfill. And this is food waste is yet some more material that does not need to be put into the landfill. What can compost be used for as far as for homeowners? It can be used in your gardens around your house, not just the plants, but or not just the smaller size plants, but it can also improve soil around trees and shrubs. And then you can use it in your house as well, use it as a soil additive for indoor plants. And really the big question is, why would we send valuable things to a landfill? Unfortunately, municipal solid waste generation in the U.S., about 14% is from food scraps. And we just don't need to be doing that. And it's part homeowner, part cafeterias, bigger scale things. But if we all do our little part, we can reduce the amount ending up in a landfill. As far as food waste, where can we put it? I'll talk about these three different destinations and outcomes for the food. One, we can just incorporate it into soil, and I'll have a slide on that. And then the bigger section I'll be talking about is composting using a bin or piles. And then third are worm bins, where you actually have some worms set up to help in the process. But basically all these ways are keeping it out of landfills. So first, soil incorporation. Basically that involves digging a hole or an elongated trench, and the more fine the material is, the more chopped up it is, then it'll increase the pace that the composting will happen. You can mix it in, and then you want to always cover it with soil. And you should not bury meat, bones, dairy, or oil. But it's a simple process, and depending on your yard, you may or may not have space for doing this. But otherwise, a popular way to compost is to use bins. Here, this picture has the earth machine, and that is one that the City of Superior is selling through the 24th. But that's just one of many designs of contained areas. But you can also just have a pile or a space in your yard. Some people will use chicken wire or fencing or even old pallets and create a little frame and make a single or a double or a triple compartment. And I'll have some pictures of this coming up. And you can also cover it using a tarp to keep it moist. And basically when the bottom is dark and rich in color, the compost is ready. And with the bin, it'll help contain any odors, and there should not have any odors, and we'll talk about some ways to keep odors down. And then it also makes composting portable. It can help the process go a little faster. It is going to take some weeks of time to convert the material over, but otherwise the bin helps with the process speed. And then also you can do it in a smaller area. Everyone varies in how much yard space you have, or what part you're willing to donate or give to the compost process, and just putting a bin out there doesn't take up that much space and works well. As far as additional equipment you might want to use, in your kitchen, you'd want some sort of collector device there, and it could be anything from a coffee can, old big ice cream tub. You can also use a bowl if you would really take it out every day. You don't want to have fruit flies in the summertime, so covered containers work better. You can buy a little trash can with the cover and the foot pedal. That's what we use at home. We like the foot pedal, and then it lifts it open so we can put the scraps right in. And to keep it a little cleaner, you can put in a biodegradable bag, compost bags that are available at some stores, or even just line it with some newspaper. Then your food will slide right out and keep the bottom cleaner. So that's for indoor. For outdoor, the bins on the outside, very wide spectrum is available. You can have spinning ones, rolling ones, crank ones. Some are a sphere. Whatever you want to give a try, all these can work well to convert the food waste into a great compost. Another thing you would need as far as equipment is a way to mix up the things. So if you don't have the rolling and spinning version and you just have a stationary plastic bin like that earth machine, then you want to have some sort of device that goes in and mixes it up, and that could be a pitchfork, or there is something sold that you can kind of crank it around. A shovel works well for getting out and doing some mixing, and then also for getting out the compost at the end. And then water is another thing that you might need depending on your situation. If it is accessing rain, if we've had enough rain, how much wet versus dry material you've been adding to the pile or the bin. So water is something else that needs to play a role in this. And then, is indoor composting a possibility? It is. I mean, if for living in apartment settings and different situations, it is possible, but overall outdoor does work well in the bin or in piles. One thing to think about is there's two categories of materials that you would use in the process of making compost: green versus brown. The green is just the soft material. They contain nitrogen. It's the fresh kitchen scraps, garden material, the melon rinds, the banana peels. It's also the green leaves, or just wetter, flexible material. The browns are the more dry, rigid material containing carbon, and those include paper, leaves, the filter. Here you can do the coffee grounds. Well, the filters can also be composted. Those would be considered the brown material. Fur, straw, the dead leaves, even some old soil can be added. And you do want both of these materials, not all of just one. And everything works faster and goes faster if it's cut in smaller pieces. So if you do have a gigantic watermelon rind, cutting it in smaller pieces will help the process. And the green versus brown, you do want slightly more of the brown. So definitely don't forget to put in the brown. If you only have the kitchen scraps, then you might be generating some issues with compost, so then you just add some newspapers or some cardboard, paper towels, that straw, soil. Another way to look at things for composting is to do lasagna or soup technique. Lasagna is just referring to layers. Layer the greens, then the browns, then the greens, then the browns. And then another approach is like making a soup, where you just keep mixing it all up. You have both the kinds in there, but you're mixing it up. There are some things you should not be putting into your compost bin or pile. Again, no dairy or meat products, bones, fish, mayonnaise, milk, yogurt, so milk products, things with oil. And then you also don't want to be adding any disease plants. So if you had something going on in your yard and plants or house plant was diseased, you don't want that to go in your pile. You don't want treated wood products, and you also do not want to put any pet waste in. As far as leaves and grass clippings, they work very well to compost right in your yard. Depending on your yard and how many trees you have, you get a supply every fall. And you can just make your own bins using fencing or wood sides. And having multiple bins allows you to give more room to move the materials at different stages. And then if you don't want to pursue any of this, but want a way to handle the grass clippings, or leaves, you can drop them off for free at the landfill and in Superior, and the landfill does use it in a separate pile than the main landfill. There's also woody debris pickup by the City of Superior in the spring and the fall too. There are numerous websites that help you out with information on what you can or cannot compost. So these were just a couple that I listed, but you can look up on the website many sites. As far as where to do it in your yard, find an area that's in the shade part of the day, because if it's too much sun, then it can dry out or cook the material. You want it to be convenient too. You might not participate in composting if you had to walk far away. So an area that you can get to conveniently is good. And to have it be on level ground where there is good drainage. You don't want flooding to occur in the area, away from the wind, and for your sake of you and or potentially your neighbors, you want to camouflage it a bit if you'd like, and you can always, even if you are using a bin, you can put a little fencing around it and then plant some shrubs around it. Something else I wanted to put in here is you can also make compost tea, great for your garden plants. And that basically involves taking an extract of compost, similar to tea, and this really enhances plant growth and helps suppress disease, and it's just this whole variety of soil organisms and a diverse microbial community that will form and help out with pest management, and can be used in a spray format. Other equipment, and I put those in quotes, the bugs, the critters are definitely going to be involved, and they will come from below and from the food itself. So their presence is definitely critical, and you'll be doing certain things to enhance them. Similar to what we do here at the wastewater treatment plant, we're enhancing the bugs. We're providing them oxygen. So in your compost bin, you turn it to mix it up to add some air. And you can also adding moisture depending on your situation. If it hasn't rained for a while, or if there is too much sun, you need to add moisture, and that's what the bacteria like, so that they can go about converting and doing what they do to make this really great organic material. Heat will come from the process itself of the breakdown, and in order to have that heat, you need enough mass or biomass for the organisms, and that comes from the process. And we'll talk about there actually is a minimum size for your compost pile. It might not work if it's too small of a pile. Other thing that will be needed is time. As far as some issues that might come up with composting, if your compost looks just too mushy, you might need to add some paper material, or torn cardboard works well. Just fibrous material will help resolve that, soak up some of the moisture. If it's not heating up, because you do want when the process is going well, you might even see steam, that it gets nice and warm in the middle. But if heating is not occurring, you might need to add some fresh grass. You can add manure from herbivores. You don't want to add any carnivore droppings or waste. And some additives can also be added. But again, I had mentioned the pile might be too small. You need at least 3 foot by 3 foot so that you get a good center area for the microbes, and they are happier then. And for here in the Northland, we do have winter times and temperatures that dip down low for months at a time, and the process will slow down then, but you can still add to it, and then it'll kick in gear in the warmer time. If the issue of smell comes up, there might be too much of anaerobic microbes that are occurring. So you can handle it by adding more paper and cardboard material. So adding that will help adjust and get the process going, and then there should not be smell. If you stir it up, which is aerating it, that also helps. If you add the coarse material, having the pile be less compacted, and then you can even create a little ventilator stack, which can include just a bundle of twigs inserted in the middle, and then it sticks out to make this passage for air to come in and be available for the microorganisms, because they'll have the food source there, but they need that environment of having oxygen for the aerobic microorganisms to work. Other issues, if there's critters, if that's keeping you from composting because you think, oh, it's going to attract critters, that's where using a closed bin instead of just an open pile, that helps contain it more. Locking the door on the bin, putting bricks around the perimeter. The Earth Machine version actually comes with kind of long screws that screw into the ground to pin it down. And but overall, give plenty of air, mix it up, turn it, then the smell will be gone and there will be nothing to attract critters. Putting layers of soil on top can also contain the compost process. If it's just taking too long, again, air might need to be added, which involves mixing it up. The minimum size needs to be achieved, and then the correct combo of ingredients of not having too much greens or too much browns. And you can always add some compost to the compost to help, which would actually contribute some of the microorganisms and help out with the process. Some gardener blogs mention different additives you can add to try to speed up the process, but again, it does take time. So speeding up, there was something, azomite rock dust isn't something that one gardener recommended. And there really is a little science to compost, but our ancestors have been doing it all along, that it's the decomposers, the microorganisms that do this. That's what they do in nature for all the leaves that fall off the trees, for all the situations out there, but here we're just doing it in a more compact format and trying to make it go faster. And there are many microorganisms involved, millions, and they're hungry. They like to eat. The microorganisms are not only bacteria, there can be a mix of fungi and some other organisms. There's a website through the Illinois Extension that has more information on the science. But overall, if you want, the more you get into it, you can learn more about the carbon and nitrogen content of different materials and why we need to add certain amounts of certain things, then that helps the process. And then in time, you get this great organic material. How long? 6 weeks or maybe two months to 6 months, depending on turning and layering and temperature. Again, in the winter, it doesn't move along as quickly. And you may see steam as it just does its stuff and converts it over. A lot of bacteria are involved. And then the third category I had mentioned is using worms, vermiculture, and that involves where you are raising and producing earthworms and the castings, worm castings. When working with bedding, the bedding will gradually disappear, and you want to keep an eye on the look of the worm population, and the rich organic soil is made up because of the worm castings, which is a product of worm digestion. There are numerous sources on the internet and books to help you through vermiculture, and that could be another way of handling food waste, and that could be the indoor approach, whether down on your basement stairs or do that in the house. I've also put in here something that you might not have heard of. So there are composters, but there's also digesters. And a zero waste food digester, they're for sale, or you can create one. And it's a way to handle the things that in a compost situation you would not add. But with this you can add the meat, the bones, the dairy, even pet waste, but then to realize this is not to be composted. It works best in a sunny spot with a well-drained soil, and then you are actually adding some enzymes, septic enzymes, to help out. So whether you're just doing it for pet waste, to handle pet waste, keep it in a safe area in your yard, but you're using the organisms to break it down and reduce it all. I wanted to include this, so part two, to really look at our society, that we're, as a country, we're throwing millions of tons of wasted food, sending it to landfills. Some are incinerated as part of the clearing out of trash mode, but it adds up to throwing away lots and lots of money. Average family of 4 throws about $1,600 in food each year. That's wasted. The food expired, the food went bad, or there were leftovers. When excess food is put into a landfill, it decomposes anaerobically and produces methane gas, which contributes to global warming. And it takes a lot of energy to bring food to our stores or to the restaurants or to your home. And when food is wasted, all of that ends up being wasted. So ways that the EPA has put together is a little food recovery challenge where they encourage grocery stores, universities, football stadiums, big areas to better sustainably manage food by reducing the waste they generate, so planning as much as possible, and then to also give surplus food to local hunger relief. That there's food banks and different groups in town that could use extra food if you had a less turnout at an event, and would bring it to the food shelf. But much of the food waste is coming from individual households, not just these bigger scale places. So to recognize we all can minimize waste we generate by planning our menu. If we buy in bulk, find a way to use it all, using leftovers, donating, and then recycling scraps and composting. You can expand how much is composted, so you and what your family generates, but also why not see if a program could get established at a local school, your church, a workplace, a restaurant. Encouraging, asking, inquiring can help lead to change. And there are quite neat setups out there for larger scale bins too. So if we can have more composting going on, the better. And this, I wanted to put in a few more things that I learned with doing the research on this. Fish waste. Some fish processing places previously were told, oh, just throw the heads and the tails and the other pieces out in the ocean. Well, they were finding that's too much if it's done on a bigger scale. So there was an effort with the National Fisheries Institute to do composting of fish waste, and then then in the end they were generating really, really good compost for local people's gardens. And then I did want to mention WLSSD in Duluth, that they have local schools, restaurants, and people in several drop-off collections sites throughout town, and all the compost or all the food scraps are collected, and they produce a compost called Garden Green and have it for sale to improve gardens, but it's all locally made. And they have a little video called Harvesting Leftovers on their website or on the internet. And then Ellen, a local person, has done quite a bit of worm composting, including at the local prison, the leftover food there. She has a big setup to handle that, food scraps. And Stowe School, also in Duluth, has been doing composting with worms with the help of Ellen for years and years, and they are adding their food scraps and they add their paper towels, and everything is not sent to the garbage. So if not you, who? And composting does not take a whole lot of special effort to be doing, and you benefit by creating this great soil by reducing waste material and creating great compost material that you can use or you can share with your gardening friends. There are plenty of websites that you can learn more about composting, how much it improves growing in an area, whether you want to dig into getting into the worm composting. There's even a game, a computer game on BBC that lets you decide whether something should go into a compost bin or not. There's blogs, there's even funny books. So that was the short version of the Composting Making Gardeners Gold program. I did want to mention we have more in this webinar series. These started in February, and we've been doing 2 a month. And for what's coming up, there'll be a tree one, and then a household hazardous and e-waste topic, and an aquatic invasive species one for coming up in May, the rest of May and June. And all of our webinars are recorded and archived on the site. And then I did want to also mention something next Tuesday night, May 21st, at the Superior Public Library. There'll be some guest speakers on native plants. And we'll have some information on rain barrels and composting. But 4 speakers will talk about the benefit of plants, and adding compost to your gardens will make them grow better. Also, through Environmental Services Division here, we do have a Facebook, Twitter, blog, and our website that lets you keep in touch with some of the other programs we offer. So thank you for attending, and all Superior residents attending are entered into a drawing, and we'll be giving away a free rain barrel the beginning of June for one Superior resident. So you may be a winner for that, and thank you. Happy gardening. If anyone had any questions, I see. And I see a hand raised, but we had a little difficulty with this before. Yep, I do not see. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not seeing the questions written here. But you can feel free to give us a call at 715-394-0392 and or come out to the Native Plant Night. Thank you very much.